Alright guys, so we're going to start by reviewing welding symbols. So first off, we have drawn here just your basic welding symbol. We have the tail, your reference line, and your arrow. They each are very important to having a welding symbol because they tell you different things that you would need to know if you're looking at welding blueprints on how to actually weld something together. On your reference line, this is probably the most important part of a welding symbol because of your welding symbol, on your reference lines you're going to have weld symbols. Now note the difference. A welding symbol is this entire thing. A weld symbol is what you put on a reference line, and that tells you what type of weld you should be using. We have two main types of welds that we are going to be using in this class because of the types of joints we're going to be focusing on and how we're not going to really be preparing or worrying about the preparation of your different metals. We're going to be focusing just on fillet and square welds. Fillet welds are those for joints that are on a T, a lap, or a corner. As you can see here, a fillet weld is indicated by a triangle. If you look at a T, a lap, or a corner joint, a corner on the inside, you can see where you weld. If you were to actually draw it, it looks similar to that triangle. You fill in that weld there, and it looks like a little triangle where it's been colored in. You can see that green versus that purple there, and the T, as well as the lap, and on the inside of a corner weld. Square welds are used for three different joints that we would come in contact with or come across in this class. And those are the butt weld, your edge weld, and a corner. Now we haven't been focusing on the edge and corner welds out in the welding shop, but in these blueprints you might come across those joints as you are trying to draw your entire project. So if you see here, a square weld is indicated by two parallel lines. And if you look here and we colored in the weld for a butt weld, an edge, and a corner, you can see there that it kind of looks like a square, or it resembles the parallel lines. So square, parallel lines, a fillet, it looks like a triangle. And again, a fillet are for these joints, a T, lap, and corner. A square weld are for these joints, a butt, edge, and corner. Now you can see that corner is on here twice. That's because the location of the weld, where you weld it, is different. Here on the corner, it's on the inside. Here for the corner for a square, it is along the outside. So if you wanted to weld on the outside of that corner instead of the inside for some reason, you would be using a square weld instead of a fillet. So we'll go ahead, we'll keep this in the back of our heads as we move on. As you should notice, around the classroom as you're watching this video, these flip charts are also posted. These are for your reference, so you can look at those and think back to, oh, I forgot what a fillet symbol looks like or a fillet weld symbol looks like. You can look there in the poster. You don't have to keep coming back to these welding videos. So here we have more about the reference line. So again, these weld symbols, fillet and square, go on this middle line, the most flat one that goes just straight across. Here we are showing the weld symbol on either side of the arrow. So going back to that entire welding symbol, a welding symbol has three parts: the tail, reference line, and arrow. That tail indicates any kind of special notes that you might need to know about welding. So if you're looking at real blueprints, it might say a specific type of welding process that should be used, or maybe C notes below. For us, we're probably not going to put anything there. The reference line is the most important. We're going to come back to that in a second. And the arrow is where you are welding. It is pointing to where you should be welding. Just like an arrow points to something, it is the same thing here. It is not trying to trick you. You're pointing with an arrow to what should be welded on your welding blueprint. So where that weld symbol goes on your reference line, in correspondence with your arrow, which side your arrow is on, tells us where we should weld. So here we have, if we drew an imaginary line, you see that dotted line there. and we have a weld symbol for a fillet weld on the same side as the arrow. You drew that. If you cut that weld symbol in half, you see that the arrow is pointing towards the same side as that weld symbol is located. That means you are going to weld on the arrow side. Now, what does that look like on a welding blueprint or in the real world? Here you can see you have a T-joint, because again, fillets could be used for a T-joint. You have the fillet on the same side as the arrow, and it's pointing to this corner. And that weld is going there, exactly where that arrow is pointing. You have it right there. Now you have weld on the other side. Weld on the other side, again, we have that same welding symbol. We cut it in half, but the weld symbol, the fillet, and the arrow are on other sides from each other. They're on opposite sides. So that means you're going to weld on the other side. Here we have a welding symbol. We have the fillet on the opposite side of the arrow. We have our T-joint, but instead of having that joint being welded right there where that arrow is pointing to, it's on the other side of that metal. Why would we do something like that? In the real world, you have blueprints. Blueprints get really crazy. You can think of the most elaborate blueprints you might have for a building. There are tons of lines, tons of things going on, lots of information that you can't just jumble or write really tiny and scrunch up in the corners. So if you don't have room to put that welding symbol where you need to be welding, that's why we have this indicator of where you should weld on the other side. So you don't have room on those blueprints, you can use this instead of having to worry about scrunching things where they don't belong, where they don't fit. Now when you're drawing your welds, drawing your welding symbols, it's very important that you're using very crisp lines. I don't want to see limp and sloppy arrows that look like this, where it might be hard to tell if that fillet symbol is on the same side or the other side of the arrow. I want to see something nice and crisp like this. Now something we didn't get to, we have weld on arrow side and we have weld on other side. One more thing we need to mention is what if you want to weld on both sides. So again, you'll have your arrow or your welding symbol. So we have your arrow, we have the reference line, and we have the tail. Let's do a square weld this time, but we want to do a square weld on both sides. All you do, or you put the weld symbol on both sides of the line. You have it on the arrow side and the other side. So this indicates weld on both sides. So I'm sure you can imagine that it's going to look like this. We'll go ahead, we'll draw our welding symbol, We're going to draw the square weld. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done. That's incorrect. Let's try that again. We have a T-joint. It should be not a square, but a fillet. So you're going to have your fillet on both sides. You see that? There's just a big triangle there pointing to it. Our final weld, if you were to actually make this, you have a weld on the side that had the arrow, and the weld on the other side, the side that didn't have the arrow. So weld on both sides. So that's all I have for you today, or for this video, about reference lines, tails, and arrows. All, again, parts of the welding symbols. So please come back and review this video as you need, as you're working on your welding blueprints. And if you don't have any questions or you're ready to go on, then you can go ahead and move on to starting your welding blueprint project. So go ahead and watch the next video on instructions for that.